So here we are in Thera, in the wild, wild west frontier of wormhole space, and yet somehow still in the very center of the universe. For the last couple of episodes, we've been trying to figure out how to survive and ideally thrive in a system occupied by multiple hostile groups with a landscape that is extremely dangerous and admittedly hard to navigate with the Tech 1 ships that Bill Dingha Cynabal is able to fly. We lost a couple along the way, but we have moved a lot of ships and a lot of materials into a station that seems relatively safe. We figured out how to navigate the constantly shifting wormhole connections. We've figured out the undock bookmarks that we need, and we've created a whole slew of other bookmarks across the system, allowing us to warp safely from corner to corner and descan things before we land on grid. And we've even reckoned with what it means to get occasionally locked out of Thera and can feel somewhat confident that we'll be able to always find our way back in. So despite the fact that the danger has absolutely not passed, I'm reasonably confident that we have indeed figured out how to thrive in Thera. So now it's time to talk about why we're here in the first place. Our overarching goal, of course, is to join the Angel Cartel, build a Cynabal, and get to Zarzak. And here's how that's going. I think we can feel pretty good about ourselves. Let's not forget where we started. This whole adventure began in high-sec in a Reaper Corvette with 2 civilian autocannons, single-digit DPS, struggling to complete even the lowest level anomalies, scrounging through space, trying to find 1 or 2 meta autocannons, building shield extenders from scratch. It was not at all clear that we were ever going to get this far. Cutting ourselves off entirely from the player market has turned so many aspects of this game that are usually trivial into complex and difficult puzzles that I was not sure we were going to be able to solve. And yet here we are. Not only did we build a frigate and get out of high-sec, we've gallivanted around the entire map of low-sec, null-sec, and now wormhole space. We got into Thera with an exploration frigate that we built ourselves from the blueprint, equipped with a scan probe launcher that we built ourselves from a blueprint, and we scanned this wormhole down with Sisters Core scanner probes that we flew out to null-sec, built a bubble, and killed a fool to get our hands on. I know that hubris and overconfidence can easily be the death of us, but I really don't think anything can stop us now. We have our blueprint, we have our conventional minerals, we have all of the resources that we need from data sites, we have all of our planetary interaction. What is left to do is collect a bit more gas, we have most of it, ninja mine a few more moon resources, harvest the last of our ice, and earn a whole bunch of ISK. Now, all of these tasks are going to be easier from Thera because we have access to every corner of space. The wormholes out of this system are going to change location every single day, and there are a bunch of them. So if we want to go to Caldari Lowsec, there's a very good chance that we'll have a way out on any given day, and if we don't now, we will tomorrow. So let's get after it. We will still, of course, be taking the occasional side quest, sometimes even lengthy ones, if we think that they will improve our capabilities. But primarily, our eye is going to be on the prize. Let's find those moons. Let's find that gas. Let's build another thorax so that we can mine that ice. And let's figure out what out there is going to give us the best opportunities to earn 500 million in raw ISK. Thera has opened up a high-stakes buffet of opportunity to us, and we need to eat. Let's go! This is Bill. Bill wants to build a Cynabal and join the Angel Cartel cause in Zarzak, but he's not making it easy on himself. A wormhole has opened up to MacLeod, which is absolutely incredible because our fuel block blueprints have finished researching, and until we go pick them up, they're going to be permanently occupying 2 of our 5 science job slots, and we have research we want to be doing. So we're going to go out, deliver those jobs, take them over to Minar, and then pick up a few more things we want to bring back here, particularly our new PI should be done. Now this wormhole says it's near the end of its natural lifetime, but it was not at end of natural lifetime when I first scanned it down, which means that it's got just about 4 hours left. So we're going to make this quick. We're not going to be building anything or researching anything we're just moving a few things around quickly and then straight back into Thera. Job number 1 is to deliver these blueprints and get them over to Manar. Oh, there's the blueprint copy. That's right. I totally forgot. People pointed out in the YouTube comments when I first moved into Thera about how I carefully made a thorax blueprint copy here in MacLeod so I wouldn't have to move my thorax BPO with me. And then, just as the timer was ticking down on my wormhole, I zipped into MacLeod, picked up my blueprint original, and flew into Thera. So I have a 1-run thorax blueprint copy that I might as well bring in as well. That's funny. My thorax blueprint original, which is kind of hard to replace, did get into Thera safely. I didn't get blown up, and now it's there. So we'll just never move it again. It's fine. But when you make a copy of a blueprint in order to keep your original safe, it does bear double checking which one you're putting in your hold when you're finally getting ready to move somewhere dangerous. We'll drop the thorax blueprint here. Fuel block blueprints into the Cynabal materials container. We're not going to start building them yet because then we would have 2 of our manufacturing slots permanently occupied until we got back out here to deliver the job. And we're not sticking around long enough for fuel blocks to build. We got places to be. We gotta get out of here. But first we have to visit Manar 8, K-Bar, our manufacturing planet, because we want to pick up these guidance systems, these high-tech transmitters, these nuclear reactors, and these smart fab units. 100% of the advanced PI that's required to build mobile depots. That's right, as soon as we get back to Thera, we have another blueprint to put in the oven. Wormhole's still here. I think we've now concluded basically all of the niggling little errands we had left to do in K-Space. From this point on, I can't think of anything that's going to make us be sitting here in Thera saying, oh, we have to pop out to Manar, we have to pop out to Albraz. All that stuff, everything in Manar and Albraz that we care about has been moved in, except for the Cynabal build materials. So the next time we need to go back to Empire Space in order to accomplish something is going to be to build a Cynabal. Way to Mobile Depot, the faction Mobile Depot blueprint that we found in that ghost site, that when I found it, I was like, well, we're never building this. Here we are. We can build one. It's a 1-run blueprint, which is fortunate because I noticed that of the 444 Zydrine we need, we have 445. So we are zeroing out our Zydrine reserves, and we couldn't build a second one if we wanted to. But we can build one way to Mobile Depot in the oven. And if we lose it, we're going to have to either find another faction Mobile Depot blueprint or go out and buy a Mobile Depot BPO. But for now, let's work under the optimistic assumption that this one way to Mobile Depot is going to last us forever. Our Mobile Depots have finished building. Our Wreath has also finished building, although it's over at Paleo-Cybernetics, where our Thorax blueprint has also finished copying. So, what it's time for us to do is hop in our pod and fly back over to Paleo-Cybernetics, see how hostile it looks at the moment. If it's quiet over there, we will bring everything that remains at Paleo-Cybernetics, except for the Thorax BPO, over to the Gravitation Laboratory. Oh, and let's take a moment to admire this beautiful pair of concentric circles of undocked bookmarks that I have set up at Gravitation Laboratory. We're in a pod right now, so we'll warp instantly anyways, but look at this. No matter what angle we undock at, we're going to have one of these bookmarks pretty much perfectly lined up. That is lovely. I'm so pleased with myself. It took some work, I'm going to tell you. It took a little bit of doing. It's going to take us a minute to warp 270 AU in our pod, which goes a whopping, I think, like 2 AU a second. 3 AU per second on building a Cynabal's capsule. Oh, we should change the name on our capsule. Don't give away free intel in Thera. E-scan shows an Imicus and an Astro. neither of which is particularly scary to me. Let's board our hauler. There she is. Give her an appropriate name. And let's see if we can't fit all of this stuff, all of our minerals, into the hauler. Our thorax blueprint copy, not original. And we'll bring our wreath blueprint copy as well. The thorax BPO is staying here because I don't want to risk it even for this one warp away from the station. We can always come back to Paleo and make copies if we need them. We've got 4 catalyst hulls still sitting here. I really thought at least one of them would fit inside Laura. It looks like we'll need to have either expanded cargo holds or rigs or both before we can fit destroyers in a wreath. And even then, we might only be able to fit one at a time. So at that point, we might as well just fly the catalysts over individually. But for now, I'll be happy just to get the minerals over to the gravitation laboratory. So let's undock and see what the situation on the undock looks like. I see at least a few Volta people docked up here. No one's here yet. Pop into first person view. It looks like the random variation on our undock this time actually pointed us right at our insta undock bookmark. So we're out safely. Even this slow-ass Tech 1 hauler warps 50% faster than a pod does. Now, it's certainly possible that those maledictions that landed on Paleocybernetics saw us warp over to the Grav Lab and might follow us there. If they warp to Grav Lab as well, they will certainly beat us to the grid. But no, we're still alone. All is well. Out of curiosity, let's fit some cargo hold expanders to Laura and see how much can fit in there. We've only got 4 meta cargo hold expanders here. We could build and fit one more. And then what if we put on rigs as well? We don't have the blueprint for them, but let's say we did. Still only fit 2 catalysts. So certainly for now, when our task is just to move those 4 catalysts from Paleo over to the Grav Lab, it's going to be faster to just fly them than it is to buy a blueprint and, you know, do the industry to maximize the cargo hold of Laura and then go over and pick them up just 2 at a time. It's only a matter of 2 trips versus 4. We will worry about that later. For now, I want to take a peek at the invention screen. One amazing perk of living in Thera, by the way, that I haven't really talked about, is the way that these stations in Thera, have not only manufacturing and optimal reprocessing, but also blueprint researching all in the same station. That's a combination that's really hard to find and possibly literally non-existent in K-Space. Usually you're going to have to research your blueprints at one station and then move the copies over to another station to actually build them out. But here in Thera, we can do it all in one place, which is so convenient. Now, this screen that we're looking at here in the industry window is the invention process. Invention only works on blueprints, Tech 1 blueprints, and it outputs a Tech 2 blueprint. You'll notice it doesn't have a 100% chance of success. Each time you run an invention job, it will use up 1 run of your BPC, and if it's successful, it will give you another BPC, but this time for a Tech 2 module. If it fails, the run still gets subtracted from your Tech 1 BPC and you get nothing. And in that case, your data cores are still used up. You'll see that in order to invent this Tech 1 blueprint, I need to input a nanite engineering data core and a molecular engineering core. We have 4 nanite engineering data cores here, but none of the molecular engineering, which I mentioned a couple of episodes, is what I've been keeping my eyes out for in the data sites we've been doing recently. So we can't invent a Tech 2 hyperspatial velocity optimizer, the warp speed rig. We can't invent it right now, which is a shame because this is one of the rigs that I would most like to have. Hyperspatials use up almost no calibration, and we could put a full set of 3 Tech 2 hyperspatials on our Atrons now that we have the Tech 2 iStabs, and that would be amazing. They would not only cross the map so fast, it actually makes you safer when you're warping off grid or landing on grid because you spend less time visible dropping out of warp. It makes you much, much harder to hit with a smart bomb, for example. But we can invent these rigs without the molecular data cores. And in fact, the same is true, I believe, of the low friction nozzle joints. and the polycarbon engine housings. All three of these are aeronautics rigs, which makes them useful on almost any ship, and all three of them have very low calibration, which makes it easy to fit the Tech 2 variants, because the Tech 2 rigs almost always take more calibration than their Tech 1 counterparts. But we can't build any of these until we get that molecular data core. So let's look and see if we can invent any rigs that'd be useful to us. We do in fact have the data cores to invent a Tech 2 gravity capacitor upgrade, but the problem is the calibration. A Tech 1 gravity capacitor upgrade takes 200 calibration, and our Tech 1 exploration frigates have 400, which means there's room on our probe for 2 of these Tech 1 scanning rigs, or 1 Tech 1 scanning rig and 1 hacking strength rig, which also takes 200 calibration. A Tech 2 scanning rig takes 300 calibration, and then the 100 that's left isn't really useful for anything we might want to put on our probe, except for maybe like hyperspatials, which we can't build. And most significantly, 2 Tech 1 scanning rigs give more of a boost to scan strength than a single Tech 2 scanning rig would. So this is the problem with these rigs that have higher calibration costs in their Tech 1 variants, is that even if you successfully invent a Tech 2 variant, it might use up so much calibration there's nothing worthwhile to put in the remaining space, and so the Tech 1 is actually more practical. Our hybrid damage rigs that we put on the Catalyst is basically the same deal. Right now we can fit 2 Tech 1 damage rigs on our Catalyst, but that uses up all the calibration. So though we have the data cores to invent a Tech 2 damage rig, our DPS would actually drop, because we'd only be able to fit 1 of them. Although, Torrance the Thrasher, who's been doing really well for us, actually has 1 damage rig and 2 shield rigs, which use up almost no calibration. We've got 100 calibration left on Torrance the Thrasher, which means that we totally could upgrade this projectile damage rig to a Tech 2 variant. And we have the data cores for it. 51 of that one and 11 nuclear physics. Okay, let's do this. Let's try our hand in invention. Just a second while I apply a few skill points. Okay, so I already had Minmatar encryption methods and nuclear physics injected from skill books I'd previously found. I did have to pay 19 million ISK on the character sheet in order to inject the mechanical engineering skill book, which frankly, I'm not sure was worth it. I'm not sure what else mechanical engineering lets us invent. It might be that we just paid 19 million ISK to invent just this one rig ever, but I was so excited about the possibility of inventing a Tech 2 rig that I just clicked yes, sure, spend our 19 million, we can do more ratting. And then we only need these skills at level 1 to do this invention, so that only required applying about 5,000 skill points in total, and I still have several 100,000 in reserve from the initial million that I redeemed all the way back in episode 1. So now we can start this job. We will have a 37.1% chance of getting a 1-run Tech 2 blueprint. But you'll notice over here on the left, these data cores are mandatory, but there's an optional ingredient down here as well. These decryptors that we've also been getting from data sites. Now these decryptors come in 8 different varieties, and you can see we have actually collected at least one of all 8 types. Each one will do something slightly different when you drop it in here. Some of them will increase the chance of success of the invention. Some of them will increase the number of runs on the blueprint copy that you produce. Some of them will cause that output blueprint to have essentially a higher level of research on material efficiency or time efficiency. And 2 of the varieties of these decryptors, the augmentation decryptor and the attainment decryptor, actually come with optimized versions as well, which do the same thing, only better. Now, because of the rules of our challenge, which makes these data cores actually kind of hard to come by, the thing that we are going to be the absolute most concerned about is maximizing the chance that our invention run succeeds, so that we don't waste data cores. And the decryptor for that is the attainment decryptor. So you can see 37.1% chance of success, drop in the attainment decryptor, and that almost doubles to 66.8%. And if we dropped in an optimized attainment decryptor, up to 70.5. Now we only have one optimized attainment decryptor, and let's save it in case there's something we want to do later with even harder to come by data cores. We have spares of these. So let's do it. 1 small projectile collision accelerator 1 blueprint copy, 1 mechanical engineering data core, 1 nuclear physics data core, 1 attainment decryptor, a 67% chance of a Tech 2 projectile damage rig for Torrance the Thrasher. Start. In 2 hours, we'll find out if we're ready to build our very first Tech 2 module. What a coup. What a watershed moment. Excellent. And now, while that invention job is running, let's take Cordelia the Catalyst, formerly known as Fiamma 5, but refit from PvP to PvE, with, excitingly, a way to mobile depot in her hold. Oh, the mobile depot in her hold doesn't make a lot of sense unless we also remember to bring some probes and a probe launcher with us. There we go. Ton of ammo, probes, probe launcher, mobile depot. Let's head out to Outer Ring through a wormhole that just opened up, securing the knowledge that no matter what happens, Cordelia will be able to find her way home. Maybe we can recoup some of that 19 million ISK we just wasted on that invention skill book. A nice stable wormhole, 16 belts, and the system all to ourselves. Let's hunt some Serpentis battleships. So a member of Volta is out here in a Saber, which I can't say I love. $4 million ISK bounty tick. Not bad. Okay, we have done a complete sweep through J9SH TAC. We have brought in 7.5 million ISK, which goes a ways towards offsetting our 19 million ISK outlay on the mechanical engineering skill book. And our cargo hold is completely full. This is the downside of carrying this mobile depot, is it's got 100 cubic meter volume, which reduces how much loot we can bring back to Thera in one trip by about a quarter. But still, the peace of mind of knowing that if this wormhole, there's a Cerberus on scan. Let's make sure he's not on the wormhole. He's not. The peace of mind of knowing that if this wormhole got collapsed, we could still scan a new way out is absolutely worth having 1/4 of our cargo hold be not accessible to us. And the hull's not terrible. Another meta cargo hold is fortuitous, since we were just talking about how we were one shy of being able to fit a full rack of them on Laura the Wreath. We were out of 5MN mech warp drives, so that's also great. And then some things that, of course, will reprocess into a ton of minerals, which we very much still want. And we've also killed about 1/3 of the time that we have to wait to find out if our invention job succeeds. Our very first invention job, still a question mark over top of it. Okay, it's the moment of truth. Time to find out if our invention run actually succeeded. Oh, two new things in our inventory. One of them's going to be the original blueprint. There it is. 19 runs remaining on our Tech 1 blueprint. 5 runs on a Tech 2 blueprint, and we've got what we need to build it. Oh, we don't have what we need to build it. We don't have the skills, for one thing. We'll need to train Industry 5, that's fine. But we also need 3 RAM weapon techs, which you build from a blueprint. They only take traditional minerals, so we just need to buy this RAM weapon tech blueprint. To Eve Tycoon. Okay, it looks like you can buy the RAM weapon tech blueprint almost everywhere in Empire Space, and it only costs 280,000 ISK. So let's head out to Losec. There's a wormhole open to Accio, a 0.2 system in the Forge, and it's right next door to Avati, which is actually over in Metropolis, but does sell the RAM weapon techs. This should be a quick in and out mission. And Aaron the Atron, wormhole seems stable. RAM weapon tech blueprint, 280,000 ISK. Okay, so we have a 5-run small projectile collision accelerator 2 BPC We've got the salvage to build all 5 of them, which means we'll need 5 ram weapon tech. Oh, and 1 run of the ram weapon tech blueprint produces 100 actual rams. So we'll just start this now. And popping out into Caldari space made me think of the Caldari ice that we still need, and we brought in Olaf the ice harvesting drone, but we don't have a thorax. However, I think we now have enough tritanium to build a thorax. Let's get that building too. It's going to be a lot more dangerous undocking a thorax in Thera than it has been undocking our frigates and destroyers, but with the concentric rings of undocked bookmarks we've now built, I feel pretty confident we'll be able to sneak this thorax out to get our ice. Things are moving along nicely. It is a shame that even after our rams finish building, doesn't mean that we'll be able to immediately build our T2 rigs, because we need to wait the 5 days for Industry 5 to finish training. So next week, our Thrasher is going to level up. But for now, I'm going to hop in Cordelia the Catalyst. We can leave our mobile depot behind, because I want to pop out to Accio and kill some Guristas. And there's plenty of stations out there, so if we need to dock up and scan a way back in, we can do that in low-sec quite easily without bringing the mobile depot. So I was saying about how the Thrasher is especially good for fighting non-Serpentis NPCs because our blasters are locked to thermal and kinetic, so fighting things like the Sanchas or the Blood Raiders, we want to have a weapon system that can select damage like autocannons can. But the Guristas actually are weakest to kinetic. The blasters do mostly thermal, but they also do a fair bit of kinetic. So, while I think we probably would kill the Guristas a little bit faster in Torrance the Thrasher, the Catalyst is totally fine for the job as well. And these hideaway frigates, of course, die if you breathe on them, so doesn't really matter whether or not we're hitting them in their resistance hole. Garista's hallucinogen supply waypoint. We were just running a Garista's den. It's a 5 of 10. Warning, says the Eve University wiki, the DPS in the second and third rooms becomes quite heavy. Do not attempt this site if you do not know what you are doing, or you risk losing your ships quite easily. 9 battleships, 11 battle cruisers, 5 cruisers. We may not be running this site. I was running the den just to see if this little catalyst here could handle it, and it can. Bunch of cruisers, which is nice because Uman right now is actually a 200% bounty risk modifier system, which I've not seen in a while. So we're earning fully double the listed bounty. I was really hoping to spawn a Garista's faction cruiser here in this den. That would have been really nice. The 5 of 10 expedition was not exactly what I was looking for. LFM composite molecular condensers. That's funny. What are you used for? Oh. Okay, well, if you ever want to build that Astro. Oh, actually. No way. Took a wormhole out to Conad, and I found myself a Blood Raider 3 of 10. We already did the 2 of 10, the Blood Raider human farm, so we're working our way up the chain of command. Flying Orion, the PvE railgun catalyst, who was the same one who took care of the human farm. Seems like exactly the right ship for this job. Room 1 down. Expect more fighting. Good advice. The 3 of 10s are sort of similar in difficulty between all the factions, which is to say, not all that difficult if you can get out to a decent range and pick off frigates one by one. And every single one of the 3 of 10s is worth running. For the reasons I talked about before, it can drop A-type frigate-sized modules, which are the best dead space modules you can get for frigates. And all of them can also drop some A-type modules that are useful on larger ships. believe this should be the last room, which means that we'll only have to go for the Overseer. The Dark Blood Alpha. Removing its influence will prevent these raids from reaching further. Now we're not going to dive for the Dark Blood Alpha. We're going to pull some range so we don't get overwhelmed, since all we've got is our basic shield recharge to protect us. We want to get out of range of those sentry guns. And then once we've got a safe vantage point, we'll figure out the best way to approach the Dark Blood Alpha. Although we can shoot at these guys as we're flying away. Okay, now where is the Dark Blood Alpha? There he is. What I want to do is sort of fly past the Dark Blood Alpha and try and snipe him as I pass, without getting myself in a position where I'm taking too much damage from anybody else. If we can take this guy out while still pulling range on him, then we can warp out and just wait for the site to despawn. The Dark Blood Alpha has been eliminated. We'll bookmark his wreck, even though we've bookmarked the final room already. The site has disappeared from the probe scanner window. We have no need to kill these 100 other frigates. Just give it a few minutes and then see what that Overseer wreck has in store for us. Another successful combat site for Orion, the Zero Tank Catalyst. This fit's been working well for us. As long as that info box pops up when we try and warp, we know that the site hasn't despawned yet. So we'll give it another minute further. Even though it's disappeared from the probe scanner window, the site's still there in space, but it will pretty quickly despawn. There we go. No DED threat assessment pop-up. Means we're going to land on a wreck with no baddies in sight. Christmas morning. All right. This is basically the same module that we got in that very first Serpentis DED 3 of 10 that we ran, that we lost immediately. Maybe we'll get a chance to actually use this one. Can't complain about this at all. These explosive coatings and kinetic coatings are a little bit less exciting. The reason that they're not worth that much is because you can also fit hardeners in these slots against specific damage types. The nice thing about the coatings is they take no CPU. However, there also are rigs which fill your armor resistance holes and also take no CPU and provide pretty much just as much of a resistance buff as these A-type coatings do. The situations where using an A-type coating with a single resistance in a low slot makes sense are pretty sort of few and far between. But the multi-spectrum is a whole nother story. Zero CPU for 22.5% resistance across the board. It's pretty hard to beat that. It's basically a damage control. We're happy about this. Let's get it back to Thera. Our first Thera thorax has finished building. In honor of Thomas the Gank Engine, we shall name you Thomas. Now, I have some plans for how we can use this thorax to help us earn the 400 million ISK we still need to buy all of our blueprints. But first, before we put the thorax at unnecessary risk in, combat sites, the number one thing that we need a thorax for is collecting our Caldari ice. If you look at our ingredients list, on the ice harvesting front, all that we still require is the ice that will give us the nitrogen isotopes. Now, part of why we moved into Thera in the first place is because, of course, that ice only spawns in Caldari space, and rather than flying a thorax gate to gate all the way from Albrez or Minar out to Caldari space, we can just wait for a wormhole to open up conveniently to somewhere where there is Caldari ice. So while we wait for that wormhole to open up, let's fit Thomas up as a high efficiency ice mining cruiser. We need, of course, to get this 465 cubic meter cargo hold up to at least 1,000. There we go. Actually, I'm tempted to go 5 cargo hold expanders this time rather than 4. That does mean we won't be able to run a damage control, although that's less essential with the shield tank we'll be using. And getting our cargo capacity all the way up to 1,280 rather than 1,040 means that we'll be able to put a mobile depot in Thomas's hold, in addition to the 1,000 cubic meter ice block, So let's see what this fit looks like with 5 cargo hold expanders and a 1280 cubic meter cargo bay. Okay, we can fit a full rack of blasters, a large shield extender, a micro warp drive, and 2 multi-specs. That seems like it should be enough to handle any of the spawns, and the micro warp drive will give us at least some survivability on gates. We don't have any rigs on yet. I could build rigs, but the thing is that the rigs we're likely to want to put on for ice harvesting are shield rigs. And in fact, I think that with these 2 multi-specs, our tank is more than sufficient to handle the ice belt rats. And once we reconfigure Thomas to do actual combat sites, we're almost certainly going to want to go armor, and we'll just have to pull those rigs off. I'm tempted to try ice mining unrigged just to save us the salvage, but all that's kind of moot until we find an ice belt to actually do our harvesting in. So it's time to hop back into Perseus the Probe. Okay, I found a wormhole out to Tino, which is a region in Sovereign Nullsec with Garista's Pirates, which means it will have the Kildari ice that we need, and the system this wormhole goes to is just 1 jump away from a system with an ice belt. Now this section of Tino is Sovereign Null, and it's currently held by Azure citizens, but the activity in this particular pocket seems quite low. So I think we can risk bringing Thomas out and trying to knock off the ice right now, but I am going to play it a little safe. What I'm going to do is I'm going to hop in one of our Atrons, either Aaron or Ansel, and fly out and just scope the system out. Make sure there's not too many people in local, make sure there's no bubbles before we bring our brand new Thorax out into Sovereign Nullsec. 2 Lokis, a Broadsword, and a Gnosis are on D-scan, but that's because this wormhole is within D-scan range of the Paleo station. I'm sure they're at the station and not at the wormhole. Yeah, there they are. We want nothing to do with them. I'm so glad we decided to move out of that Paleo cybernetic station. Those guys can just go straight to hell. There are a couple of people in local. One of them's in an Astro. The other guy is a member of the Alliance that has sovereignty here. I noticed that they seem to be affiliated with Fraternity, since Fraternity controls the iHub. So there is the possibility of a more substantial response fleet than whatever Azure citizens themselves would be capable of fielding. Now the system with the ice belt is Igtak-Zam. There's a Fortizar on grid with the gate, and it's got 1 person in it. So we know that KK Killick is sitting there in that Fortizar. I do not love that name. And our ice system is completely empty. Pristine white glaze belt. White glaze is the ice that we need. I think we might be able to just get this done right now. Scoot back into Thera, grab Thomas. Perfect. This is exactly what we need. Okay, let's bookmark this single large asteroid so we can warp directly to it when we bring Thomas in. The wormhole does still have plenty of time on it and plenty of mass. Now we know we can't rely on that too much, but it's still preferable to jumping through when either it's end of lifetime or already critically disrupted. This is about as secure as the wormhole info panel can look. Now we just came through that wormhole like 10 seconds ago, so I'm actually going to take the slightly risky move of warping directly to the wormhole, even though we're outside of D-scan range. The reason for that is because if we warp to our D-scan spot and then warp from there to the wormhole, we will be on D-scan for those Lokis and that heavy interdictor that are sitting on the Paleo station for longer. If they're feeling bored, if there haven't been a lot of people undocking for them at Paleo, they might see a single Thorax going through a wormhole to Sovereign Null and decide that's worth hunting. So what I would really like to do is land on the wormhole, jump through immediately, and hopefully, at least it should mean that I'm not on their D-scan for long enough for them to do several scans and pinpoint exactly where I am, which is something that there would be a risk of if I was doing the bookmark bounce. Put on a badass ice harvesting skin, and we're through. The system is empty. That's exactly what I like to see. Warping directly to the white glaze. Pristine white glaze. Reprocesses into 483 units of nitrogen isotopes. We'll get about half of that We need 405 nitrogen isotopes. That means two blocks of pristine white glaze will do it for us. Time to launch Olaf. Get to work, buddy. Now we only have room for 1 block of white glaze in Thomas's hold, which does mean we're going to need to scoop back into Thera twice. We're going to have to do this whole process twice with all the risk associated with it. Oh, and the NPCs have landed. We will now find out if our shield blaster thorax fit here can actually take out a battleship. I suspect we won't have a problem. They're barely even scratching our shields. I think we're going to be fine here. Now, Olaf's cycle time is 5 minutes and 5 seconds. I did not take note of when his cycle started, so we're going to have to keep an eye on when he starts flying back towards us. Hopefully it takes us less than 5 minutes to take out this battleship. We don't have a ton of DPS on Thomas with these ion blasters and not a single damage mod. 188.7 DPS. Fair bit less than even our Thrasher does, but it should be enough. As always, thanks for watching, and a big thank you to the Declarations of War team for inviting me onto the podcast. If you're new to the series, well, you've got a hell of a ride ahead of you. Make sure to join us on the Discord or in the in-game channel. There's a great community of people there who'll be happy to answer all of your questions. I hope you stick around.